Hi everyone, I'm Madison and I go out to work in Walt Disney World in February 2025. I'm going to be a cultural representative on the programme in the UK Pavilion in Epcot, and this is the third part of our series on the application process. So I've covered the first part, which is your CV and cover letter that you send off to Yummy Jobs. I've covered the second part, which is the pre-screen interview with Yummy Jobs in Epping, and then today I will cover the in-person interview at Disney headquarters with someone from Disney's recruitment team. So we'll go back to when I found out that I got to the next stage. So I got my congratulations email, you've made it through to the next stage. Just 2 weeks after my interview. So I think that must have been about maybe the 11th of March. And my interview was going to be, I think, the 26th of April. So we got the email saying you need to add all of this information to Doc, which is Disney's official recruitment system, like online system. And after we added all of that information, which was our CV, our cover letter, our personal information, things like your passport, stuff like that. This isn't applying again, this is just so that they have it all on their records. Once you had completed that, Disney then emailed you with a link with options to book your slots, because they were doing the interviews over maybe 3 or 4 days. They must have been interviewing a lot of people, because I think the options were between like 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. and each interview was probably only about 15 minutes max. There was 2 people interviewing at one time, so that's a lot of people that they were interviewing. Anyway, I don't think I was the first day, I think I booked the second day. And I booked the second to earliest time slot that I could, because, and I would highly recommend this if you can, because you have to be there at 8:45, because they do a presentation to everyone who's interviewing that day. So even if your interview is at 3, you will have to be there for 8:45 to have this hour-long presentation with someone from Disney recruitment. And I was like, I don't want to be going all the way to Hammersmith for 8:45, having this talk, and then having to wander around Hammersmith for like hours, getting more and more stressed and worked up about the interview. So I booked, I believe, the 10:15 a.m. slot, and I think the earliest was 10, and I just booked that just in case like I wanted to go to the loo, or I felt like I needed like 5 minutes fresh air or something, and I knew that I wouldn't have to leave, I would be able to go straight up to wait for my interview. So that's basically what happened. I live very locally to London. I live in Peterborough, and a lot of my friends live in London, and I'm lucky that a lot of them have spare rooms or sofas that I can stay on. So I stayed at my friend's house who lives in Old Street. I stayed in her spare room, and I then just had to get the tube to Hammersmith. So it took a little while. It's like the other side of London, but obviously a lot easier than either having to pay for a hotel or trying to travel all the way on the day. So yeah, I was very fortunate and grateful to have friends in London. And I got up very early. I think I had to get up maybe at like 6 to get ready. I definitely would have left by about 7, because I think it was maybe like 40 to 45 minutes to get there. And obviously you never know what's going to happen with the tube, and also I'd never been to Disney headquarters before, so I didn't want to feel I didn't want to get there in a rush and then not know where it is and be late. I think if you're like late, it's like you snooze, you lose. So I'm lucky I did, because when I got there I was so confused bear in mind, I hadn't actually been to Hammersmith before, like on the tube. So when I came out, I was like, where am I? Why am I in a shopping centre? And where the hell is the Disney headquarters? Because Yummy Jobs did send a map, but I'm not very good at understanding maps. It was about which entrance to go to of the Disney headquarters, and I obviously found the wrong one. And then I was walking around the station for ages because the building is basically part of the station, the Disney headquarters, and just couldn't find the entrance. Eventually, well, there was 2 other girls looking relatively lost, and we approached each other and was like, are you also here for the Disney interview? And they were like, yes, because we're all silly, I guess, and couldn't understand simple instructions. But we did find it. We got there, I think, maybe 25 to 9, so we were 10 minutes early, but when we signed in they were like, oh, you're the last ones here. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that I found those girls, because I would have felt so panicked and stressed if I was the last one there and I'd turned up alone. They obviously didn't care, like we were still early, but I still would have felt like anxious about that. But yes, we then had an hour talk where we had a vet who is the head of recruitment, or the head of HR or something, and she did about an hour-long talk talking about the programme, talking about the benefits, talking about what's expected of us, the pay, the things that we have to book beforehand, the things that they do, etc, etc, and then they took questions. I won't delve into the information because it's going to change year on year, and then most of it was basic stuff that we already knew before applying. So it was about like whether you're going to be in food and beverage or merchandise and what the difference is, just kind of general stuff like that. One thing that I did learn that I didn't know was that they are like partnered with Harvard University, and you can do courses and modules through Harvard while you're working there, and I think they're free, which is amazing. That's so cool. I will hopefully be taking them up on that. Obviously it depends on the time that I have, but I mean, I just think that would look so good on your CV. And also I am the type of person always learning, always taking up a new course, even though I tell myself that I don't want to and I don't like to, but I obviously am the type of person that just needs to keep learning, because I left school, went to university, did a master's, and then when I left university and started my current role, I've done like 3 qualifications while I've been there. So yeah, I've never stopped. I've never left the education system, and I don't want to really. It's great to learn new things, but anyway, this is all just background information. I'm not sure if it'll be helpful or not, but we had that for about an hour. She let us pause for questions. I didn't really have any questions, to be honest. I knew that they were going to be as thorough as they could be. I think some people asked about holiday and they were kind of like, it depends on like different things, because the holiday in America is different to the UK. You're not entitled to it, kind of thing. But yeah, that was that. They then said if your interview is from 11 onwards, then go away and come back like 15 minutes before your interview, and if it's before that, then come with us. So mine obviously was before that, so I followed the Yummy Job recruiters who were there to help us on the day. They took us up to one of the rooms somewhere else in Disney headquarters, and there was about maybe 8 or 10 of us sat in a room just waiting before they took us then up to a different room to wait for our actual interview. So yeah, we sat and just chatted. It was very casual. We were talking about like Disney cruises. We were asking the head of Yummy Jobs about his like previous experience, things like that. Just very chatty. I had all of my interview prep with me, but I didn't go through it. It depends on what you're like as a person. You could use that time if you want to look over everything again, but I've been the same even with like school exams. On the day of, I try to actively avoid thinking about my exam and the content that might come up, because for me, I find that it panics me. I'm like happy to revise all like the night before and then wake up the next morning and just like not try and think about it, because I end up panicking myself, being like, oh, I can't remember that bit, or I don't think I remember that bit. So it depends on what you're like. I had my notes with me just in case, but I didn't go over them. And regarding the notes, I did speak about these in the pre-screen video, but I used the exact same questions. Yeah, I used the exact same questions, all 47 of them, just revised them more. Yeah, if you want to know, if you want the list of them, then I could send them to you, but it was basically a mix of my personal work experience, my personal life experience of traveling the UK, traveling to Florida, how I think I could handle living in Florida, my experiences of living with housemates, with roommates, just all the kind of things that I thought they were going to ask me. And then when the time came, Alexis from Yummy Jobs came and got a couple of us, and we'd go up to another room and sit outside where Yvette and the head of international recruitment were interviewing in like a big room. There was just one person on one side and one on the other, like you couldn't really hear what they were saying. And one person would come out and be like, oh, like you're whoever's next, go in. So it was random whether you got who, like it was random who you got interviewed by. I had the head of international recruitment, I think his name was Steve, but I could be completely wrong. But he was absolutely lovely. It was one of the best interview experiences that I've had. I felt quite nervous because a girl came out before me and was like, oh, he didn't really ask me much. I didn't really get to say much. I have no idea like how it went. So then I was like, oh dear. But personally, I had a great experience. It felt very, very casual, very chatty, very friendly. Like he obviously asked me a couple of interview questions, but it was similar to the Yummy Job one where it was kind of intertwined into just our general chit chat and conversation, where I spoke to him about like his work experience. I spoke to him about I think it was his like niece, and we just like spoke about old Disney rides and things like that. But obviously also he did ask me about how I would find living with different people, if they had if their idea of clean and tidy was different to mine, just again to check that they think that I'd be okay. But he looked at my experience and was like, okay, like you're clearly like fine to move abroad, like you clearly fine moving away from home, because I think a lot of the people they interview are obviously like 18, which absolutely fine to apply and to move away and everything, but they're just double checking in these interviews that they think you'll actually manage it, because I think that's the biggest worry for them, is that they'll send someone out and then they won't cope and they'll have to come home. They don't want anyone to go through that, and obviously it's an annoying thing for them to then recruit for their place. So again, it was very quick and very chill, and I didn't really know how it went, but I knew that it didn't go badly. Like I felt very confident when I left that I couldn't have done any better. I didn't get to say everything I wanted to say, but that's because I wasn't asked everything. And yeah, I just knew that it had gone well and I'd done the best that I could. I had no idea whether that meant I was going to get into the next stage or not, because I knew that there was so many people they were interviewing, and I think it's probably quite hard to do it wrong. So they're kind of just having to really think about who could handle being out there and who could not. And yeah, I'm not jealous of them at all. I don't know how they would do it. I can't imagine being in their position trying to pick, because everyone that I met would have been perfect for the role. And yeah, that was it. I then left and I rang my mum and I was like, I think it went really well, but I don't know. And yeah, that was that. I then got an email the next day saying like, thank you for your time. Again, very similar to the last time, when the first line of the email was like, oh my God, they've already rejected me. It's been a day. Because it just was a very like non-bias tone where like I just couldn't gauge what they were trying to say. But it was literally just saying like, thank you for your time, like we'll let you know in a few weeks. It wasn't a few weeks. I think it was maybe 6 weeks later I got my first waitlist email. It might have even been longer than 6 weeks. But that is the hardest part of the process for me personally, and I think a lot of people feel the same, was the waiting. So got that email saying you'll hear from us in a few weeks. It was 6 weeks later at least, and then I got the waitlist email, which basically was saying we haven't got our dates yet, we don't know numbers and when we're needing them, but please select that you're still interested and we'll keep you on the wait list, and then we'll email you again next month to check the same until they have a date for you. So nearly everyone goes on this wait list. The only people that don't go on the wait list are the ones that say that they can start like ASAP, which I couldn't do. I didn't want it. They did ask me this in the final interview when the earliest I could start. I said January because I didn't want to go before Christmas, and I'm going to New York at the end of November, and I was like, not gonna miss that. So, but most people I think said that they could start whenever. So they pick a few people that they need like ASAP to backfill some roles. So that's normally just like maybe 3 or 4 people, and then after that it's from 2025 onwards. So for anyone in 2020 going out in 2025 was just put on the wait list. So yeah, I got that January, February, March, April, May, and then I got it again June and July. So that was 3 months of waitlist on the 26th or 27th, like clockwork, and I would just click yes every time I'm still interested. What I would do is screen record yourself clicking yes, or take a screenshot or something, because you don't get an email saying like thank you for confirming. So the first time I did it, I think I did it like 3 times because I was worried that I'd miss it, because if you didn't respond within 7 days or clicked no, you would get kicked off the waitlist. There were a couple of people who like did something by mistake or removed by mistake and they added them back on, so I think it's not the end of the world if you do miss it, but definitely try and not, because just to save yourself some stress. I got it 3 times, and then on August the 8th, I got an email saying congratulations, you have been given the date of February 25th 2025, please fill out all of these steps within the next 7 or 5 days to proceed with the role. So I was obviously ecstatic when I received that. So basically a few people, it was either the day before or like a few hours before, had been saying in the group chat that I was in, that was like everyone who had applied and interviewed this year, saying a couple of them had said they had their invitation, and I was like, being dramatic, I knew that people got their like invitations and dates like all the way through to sometimes the end of the year, but I just really wanted to be in like the first group, obviously, like everyone did. Like I just wanted to know as soon as possible, like whether I was going out in January, February, March, April, May, June, didn't care, I just wanted to know, because the waiting that 3 months was like, well actually I guess it was 4.5 months, was really not enjoyable, being like, am I moving to Florida next year, or am I gonna get a different job and move to London or whatever, like not knowing and not being able to plan, not being able to apply for other jobs. Well, I had applied for a few other jobs, but not knowing and not really be able to think, not being able to look forward to anything either way. Like I knew I was very grateful and very privileged to know that I was going to have a good year next year no matter what I did, but not knowing and not being able to plan was very stressful. But yeah, when I saw a few people had theirs, I was like, oh no, like I'm gonna have to wait like another month again, like that's gonna be it for this month. But no, it was either a couple of hours later or the next day, I think it was literally a couple of hours later, I got my email through, and yeah, I was so happy. I don't think I've ever felt like joy or excitement like it, which like for people that don't understand this job or like this love for Disney and the parks, like I know that I will just seem crazy, but it just is a dream. Like I, from such a young age, I'd always been interested in this job and wondered how people got it. And then obviously I applied when I was 18. I'd found out the year before how people apply, and learned all about it, and then applied, obviously didn't get it. And for it to then happen, how many years later? 8 years later. God, like that's crazy. But yeah, it was just, I was so happy. And yeah, that was kind of it. Then there's loads of like paperwork, documentation stuff. That's like your passport, your national insurance, maybe. Actually, I don't think they need to know that. That would not make sense. But yeah, you then had to send a load of documentation off. I've also now done my DBS check via Yummy Jobs. And then after that, it's just a long wait until your visa appointment to get your visa at the embassy. And they usually do that about 6 weeks before. So I'm thinking it's going to be like early New Year that I get that appointment. But now again, it's just waiting. But this is the kind of waiting I don't mind, because I know that I've got it. I know that I'm going. And yeah, I'm just so happy. I can't wait. That is the third stage. That's the interview at Disney headquarters. Do let me know if there are any questions, if you want any tips, anything. DM me on Instagram, which is maddieskingdom_, or just leave comments on here. I'm very happy to help. And yeah, I'll see you next time. I will either do I think the next one will be less of like a tips and stuff, and because that's kind of the end of the recruitment process, but maybe I'll do one about like all of the documentation you have to do, and just about the waiting and how I've coped. So yeah, keep your eye out for the next video.